Today I'll be talking about projection. And projection is the process of displacing one's feelings onto another person, animal, or object. And this is very common. For instance, there's a woman who's in a marriage, and when her husband's made a comment sort of about kind of alluding to her weight, she took it very, very personally, and she became very upset. But it came to be realized that she's upset about more than just her husband's comment. You see, when she got married, she felt pressured into the relationship by her parents and by an early pregnancy. And now her child is 9 years old, and she feels like she's got to stay in this marriage for another 10 years or so before the child would be at a point where it would be okay for her to leave. And she's starting to feel trapped, and she sees her husband kind of living his own life, and she starts to interpret her husband's actions, how he goes out and plays golf with his buddies and stays late at work, as the husband not being happy in the relationship. And so she comes up with an idea in her head, and the idea is, my husband is not happy in this marriage. This is a story that she's telling herself. My husband is not happy in this marriage, but the reality is that who's not happy? Yes, really, she is projecting. This is an example of psychological projection, and there's many different ways that a person can project, but projection by definition is the process of displacing one's own feelings onto another person, an animal, an object, or so on. It's most commonly used to describe attributing one's own unacceptable urges or one's own undesirable feelings onto another person. Usually, we look at it in the negative. When we are doing it with negative feelings, thoughts, and emotions, the reality of projection is that we're using it as a defense. So my husband is unhappy in this marriage is a defensive subconscious strategy for this woman in the example, because her feelings of being unhappy in this marriage are very icky to her. And she doesn't feel it's right to feel that way. She doesn't feel it's justified or acceptable. And so rather than dealing with those feelings, she rather just say, hey, they're not my feelings. They're his feelings. We see this all the more so with narcissists, because narcissists love to use projection as a defense mechanism. I refer to narcissists a part of the category of egopaths, these individuals who prioritize themselves above empathy for others. And so therefore they have a lack of empathy, of kind feeling for other people. And so rather than caring how other people feel, they care more about how they look and how they feel. And they'll care about that to the extent that it's actually to the detriment of other people. And so that is egopathy, or being an egopath. It is also described as narcissism. And so these narcissists or these egopaths will actually utilize projection as a defense mechanism. So anything icky about themselves, they'll just say it about you before you can say it about them or see it about them. And so they go in at you right away and say, you know what? You just seem like you're in a really bad mood lately. Or you just seem really angry. You're just really fussy all the time. You complain a lot. But when they say that, it's really that they're projecting something about themselves. They might even go as far as to say, you have a lack of empathy. And you're like, what? How do I have a lack of empathy? You're not really very cooperative. And it's like, I'm the most cooperative person. I'm too cooperative, right? And so they say something that's totally untrue about you. It doesn't even have to have a shred of truth about you, because what they're actually doing is projecting their negativity onto you. They may go as far as to accuse you of cheating. They say, you know what, I can't trust you. Let me look at your phone. You're probably out there cheating. You said you're out with your friends. You're probably out there doing something else. And they're doing all that blaming and all that shifting as a way of projecting. And when you realize that this projection exists for trauma survivors, including narcissists, and that it's so prevalent, you realize that it gives you a window into how the person really feels and what the person's really struggling with. You see, because if a narcissist accuses you of being angry, it's really because they're angry. If a narcissist accuses you of lacking empathy, it's really because they kind of sense that they lack empathy in themselves. And so when a narcissist, the ego path, looks at you and says, I don't trust you, it's because they are not trustworthy and they don't feel they should be trusted. And when they say, I think you're cheating, it means that they either are cheating or they're thinking about it. When you recognize that this projection is a tool to see into the other person, what they're saying about you is telling you something about them, you can utilize your knowledge of projection to see something that otherwise you may not have spotted. You can protect yourself. But it's not just the ego paths that utilize projection as a defense mechanism. Also, empaths use projection as a defense mechanism. Now, when I refer to empaths, I'm talking about persons, especially those who maladapted from their trauma to let go of the ego and hold on to a hyper concern for the feelings and thoughts of other people. But here's the thing about empathy. Even healthy empathy is actually a projection. This is something people don't understand. You see, empaths are often believed to have special powers. And the idea of the empathic special powers is that they can really feel what another person is feeling. But this is not the special power of an empath. Empaths are powerful, but you can't actually feel another person's emotions. You can't actually think another person's thoughts because the other person is a self-contained unit. So their emotions and their feelings do not travel through the air into the ether and then into your system and then you feel it. That's not how it works. What you're actually doing when you're feeling empathy is you are projecting onto that person how you believe they may be feeling. And understand, this can be a good thing. Empathy is good. It's a gift. But the gift is not that you're actually feeling through some type of osmosis a whole nother person's emotions. What's actually happening is that you are projecting onto them what you assume they would be feeling, and then you're feeling that inside of yourself. That is a form of projection because you're not always right. You don't always know what someone else is feeling. Sometimes you as an empath may have said, oh my God, I'm so sorry, because you felt bad for them, because you assume they may have felt bad. And then the person said, what are you talking about? I feel great. And you're like, oh, okay, sorry. I just assumed you might have felt bad because so-and-so excluded you from the group. And they say, no, I didn't want to be in that group. And then you realize, oh, I don't have the special abilities of knowing what a person is feeling. No, you don't. You do have the ability to project what you believe another person is feeling. And this is very important. This is a special skill. I utilize it in all of my sessions. When I work one-on-one with a person, I ask for the details of what it is that they're describing that they felt and that they're going through so that I can apply empathy, because I want to feel the pain of their experience or their trauma. I want to feel a little bit of that inside myself so I can put myself there. But it's not a special power that I can actually feel their energy through the video call into my body. That's not what's happening. When they give me the information, I'm using that information to create an understanding so that I can project what I believe they must be feeling. And then I can feel that inside of me. We all do this. Even when we're watching movies, we're feeling what the character in the movie is supposed to be feeling, but it's really just an actor. So they're not really feeling it necessarily. It's just a movie, but we think we're feeling it. All of it's a projection, literally and physically. When you're watching films, it is a projection. So we have to understand where the power really is. The power is not in something mystical that's happening between you and the other person. The power is in something very immense, very amazing that's happening inside yourself. It's the power of projection. We all project. The question is, can you utilize projection in a positive manner instead of being blind to yourself? Often many empaths, many trauma survivors develop a blind spot for themselves, and that's why they're always projecting. So they actually go through life saying, you know, that person's really annoying. You know, that person's really mean. That person's really judgmental. That person's really, and they're doing all that because they have a blind spot for themselves. Oh my God, she feels really bad. But then you ask the survivor, how do you feel? I don't know. You've developed a blind spot for yourself. It should be very rare that you don't know how you feel. Perhaps you have to develop the vocabulary. Perhaps you have to be more mindful. But you should almost always know how you feel. If you ever find yourself unable to describe your feelings, then you're recognizing that you've developed a blind spot where you need to be very sharp. You have to understand how you feel, because your feelings are a communication from your subconscious self to the conscious self. And if you don't know or understand your feelings, then how can you facilitate proper communication, a proper relationship with the self? Empaths often spend all of their time and energy worrying about what everyone else is feeling and thinking, and assuming and intuiting what everyone else is feeling and thinking. And sometimes it gets to the point where it's too much for them. They become overwhelmed by everyone else's feelings and emotions, and they just say, oh my gosh, I can't handle this. I've got to go be alone. I just got to get away. And so then they become isolating. Try to remember that your empathy is a projection. You do not know what everyone else is feeling and thinking. If you learn how to utilize a projection, it can become a superpower. But thinking that you know what people are thinking is a distortion. That is a negative distortion. In fact, usually when you say, oh, you know, they're probably thinking all these people are thinking, right? Isn't that what happens in social anxiety? You go into a situation and you're like, all these people in this room probably think I'm so ugly. They probably think I'm so fat. They think I'm so stupid. It's always negative. When you think you know what people are thinking, it's always negative. It's just negative. The reason you're doing that is because it's a part of your trauma defense. You're defending yourself because you're in trauma mode. And so you're acting in that small part of your brain, your amygdala. And so to defend yourself, you just decide, oh, I already know what everyone's thinking. I have the ability to read people's minds, right? But you do not. You cannot read people's minds. What you read is your own mind coming up with ideas. You have a great imagination. You don't know what people are thinking. And notice it's always negative, because really that projection is just a defense mechanism. You figure that if you can think that they're thinking something bad before they really think the something bad, then you'll protect yourself. It is just projection. It's all projection. It's a defense. And this is where we have to be careful about judging, because judging can really be a projection as well, where we look at other people and we think we know that they're good or they're bad, or they're untrustworthy, or they have bad intentions and bad motives. So we're judging people. But really, can you read people's intentions? No, you cannot. Otherwise, you would not have been in the 17-year marriage to a narcissist. Really, can you read people's motives? Can you read their hearts? No, you cannot. People love to say, you know, I'm a really good judge of character. No, you are not. You are not a good judge. No one is a good judge, because humans are not made with that gift of judging. That's not our gift. We have the gift of projection. So you can project what you think a person is based on how they're acting. And again, that can be good. Even prejudice can be good. Prejudice can protect us. Prejudice is our ability to be intuitive. That's what intuition actually is. It's just the ability to make a snap decision before you have all the information. That's intuition. That's prejudice. Prejudice can protect you. You're walking down the street, you see some guys over here in their hoodies and they look kind of menacing. Your prejudice tells you these people could be dangerous. I'm getting out of here. That's protecting you. Prejudice can be good, but you cannot rely on prejudice. You also cannot rely on intuition. I'm sorry, it is not a special power. It is underthinking, because you're only utilizing your emotional negative part of the mind. If you're not in immediate danger, then you don't need prejudice or intuition. What you need is to activate your logical higher mind, your prefrontal cortex, so that you can really analyze all the information. Instead of being judging, you're discerning. And discernment is not casting the entire understanding on a person as to whether they're good, bad, right, or wrong, but discernment is deciding for yourself, again, self-contained, if they're healthy for you. That is discernment. You don't need to judge the person. You don't need to know their motives and intentions. What you need to do is discern if they're healthy for you. If they are not, then you need to remove yourself from them. The reason I decided to do the talk today on projection is because someone actually asked me a question and they wanted to know about this term. If you spot it, you got it. And so this term, maybe you've heard some of your other therapists and personalities use this term. If you spot it, you got it. It's a catchy little way of helping you to recognize projection in yourself. If you spot it, you got it. Meaning if you look at someone and think, boy, that person sure is inconsiderate, I hate that. Or man, that person's annoying. They have no awareness of how much everyone else doesn't want to hear them talking. Use this phrase to remind yourself that you seeing that in another person and viewing it as undesirable may be an indication that you actually struggle with that same flaw, or that you have that same problem. If you spot it in another person, maybe it's that you got it. Maybe it's really that you're annoying and you hate that about yourself. I remember one trauma survivor said to me, what the reason she broke up with her boyfriend, she noticed he was a people pleaser. And she hated that he was a people pleaser. And the reason is because she knew she was a people pleaser and she hated that in herself. So she projected her hatred onto him because really she hated it in herself. And that made it difficult for her to be patient with his imperfection. And that's what can happen to us. When we're projecting too much, it can become difficult to be patient with other people. When we drop the judgment and we start looking at ourselves and we go inward, and if you use the term, if you spot it, you got it, whatever you got to use to go inward, we might start recognizing ourselves in a way that would produce humility, and it helps to add to the patience, because none of us are perfect. So we don't have to be annoyed with everyone else and think that we're superior to everyone else who has a flaw. What helped me with this was my spiritual studies and the scriptures when I was a kid that I read. Do not be judging, that you may not be judged. Or you may have heard, before you pull the splinter out of your brother's eye, pull the rafter out of your own eye. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. And that concept is, okay, you're looking at him and talking about how he's got a piece of straw in his eye. But meanwhile, you've got an entire log sticking out of your eye. And this is hyperbole to express that you need to look inward instead of looking outward. Instead of worrying about everyone else's flaws, worry about your own flaws. It's a good policy to live by. The more we do that, the more powerful we really become, because it's not our job to change everyone else's flaws. So what is really the benefit of noticing their flaws? Very limited to no benefit outside of just discernment. You need to be really good at noticing your own flaws, noticing what you need to work on, not projecting onto everyone else and judging everyone else as to as to what it is that they really have wrong with them. We must become very good at being self-contained, right? So when we get to this concept of projection, again, this is the process of displacing our feelings onto another person. So we think we know what they're saying, what they're feeling, what they're doing, but we don't know what's going on inside another individual. It's very important we get that. Why is it so important? Because not knowing how to regulate projection keeps us stuck in the trauma cycle. Whereas if we understand how to regulate our projection and use it properly, it will help us to heal. And I would like to explain that to you. But again, not knowing how to regulate projection, it keeps us in a cycle of trauma. I think to best explain this, what I'll do is I'll pull up an illustration for us to look at. This illustration here, this is the trauma cycle. And so it's there to kind of help us to understand what happens with trauma. So number one is the trauma itself, or how it affects us, which is really what makes it a trauma. Okay, so and this is important because we have to understand what trauma really is. Trauma can be really anything, but ultimately it's how it causes a change that is undesirable in us and is distressing. A trauma is something that is distressing and causes an undesired change in us. Does that make sense? So it's how something changes us. So imagine you go through an experience, you're assaulted, you're beat, something like that happens to you. And now you go into number two, and we have our emotions, which is how we feel and how we think about said trauma. All right. Now, what happens where we get caught in the cycle is that we tend to project these feelings, emotions onto someone or something else. And we get caught in that. Now, this can be a little bit confusing because obviously, if we had an attacker, an assailant, an assaulter, then it was someone else's fault. Someone did traumatize us in the sense that they caused the actual trauma. But what happens when we're stuck in projection is we're too much on the outward focus. So we're talking about how other people need to change and how we need to change the laws and how we need to fix the society and fix these people. And we're worried about everyone else's thoughts about us. And we're worried about what everyone else is feeling. And this can take two extremes, right? So one extreme would be a woman on the internet jumped into one of my videos and said, "How could you do this? You are victim blaming. You are blaming us. You are blaming the victim for what's happened to us." So what she's suffering from, because the reality is, right, if someone breaks your windows, that's not your fault. But I give talks on how to repair your windows. You understand why? Because ultimately that's your house and those are your windows. So it is your responsibility to fix them. Because if you don't, you'll start to get cold breeze inside your house and the rain will start to come inside your house. Right? You're going to get all these negative situations that occur as a result of you not fixing the windows, even though it was not your fault that the windows broke. It is your responsibility to fix them, because otherwise the neighbors come around and say, "Hey, we're sorry for what happened to you, but it's been 3 months and you still haven't fixed these windows. You're making the neighborhood look bad." And that's where trauma survivors find themselves when they project everything outward. They forget to look inward to what now is their responsibility to change. What is the mess that they have to clean up in order to get into healing? So when they are purely on an outward focus, and they're in projection, which is number 3, that pulls them into number 4, which is power displacement. Power displacement is developing ideas and concepts such as, well, if only these people would change, if only this had never happened, if only I could find someone, if only, and it's outward, outward, outward again. So they're displacing the power. They wish that it never happened. They wish they could do, or someone else could come in and save them. They wish, they wish, they wish. Now, when you displace the power, then you end up getting traumatized again. Well, how so? Well, you've never healed, or you've never learned your own personal power to heal. So as a result, you're waiting for something or someone else to take the pain away, and you end up getting hurt again and again, because that doesn't actually work in this world. Giving everything and everyone else the power doesn't work. An example of how you would see this is people in romantic relationships kind of waiting for a savior. So they meet a guy, they meet a gal, and they say, oh, this one, they're going to take all my pain away. This is the one. They understand what I've been through. They've been through things too. And they place all that power for their healing outwardly. And they displace it on this other person. And so in this power displacement, they now set themselves up to be very badly hurt, because that person is not their savior. That person is also a trauma survivor, and it may be an egopathic narcissist or an abuser, or even an empath with CPTSD who's incapable of caring for another person's feelings and emotions because they can barely handle it, because they have their own issues with projection. And so this person ends up getting badly hurt or neglected, traumatized, which leads to more emotions and feelings that are difficult to cope with, which leads to more projecting outwardly, which leads to more power displacement, which leads to more trauma, which leads to more emotion. You get the cycle? So the more we continue to project in an unhealthy way, the more we continue to be traumatized. And many people wonder how they can heal, and they feel like they can't heal. But the reason is because they put all of the control and all of the power outward, and they don't know to keep in, to hold on to that, some of that power, to know that they have the choice, they have the ability and the responsibility to reprogram their own subconscious mind. They just keep saying, well, my mom always told me, well, my dad always told me, and they're stuck because they're outwardly placing and outwardly projecting. Is this making sense? There was another survivor that reached out with another extreme in projection, and she said, well, you need to stop blaming the narcissist. And instead of blaming them, we need to try to help the narcissists. So then see, if we help all the narcissists, she says, then they're not going to hurt anyone anymore. And then we'll truly be safe. Again, this is another form of projection because all of the power is going outward. The idea is that we're going to all go out there and we're going to help the narcissists somehow, these people who aren't interested in being helped, and then everything's going to be great because we fix the outside world, so then we're going to be healed. Again, this is outwardly projecting too much. We need a proper balance. Yes, it is the fault of another person if they've done something wrong to you. That was their fault. They are to blame for what they've done. True. But these are your windows. This is your house. It's your responsibility to clean it up. So how can we do this? Remember that trauma, I'm defining trauma as something that causes distress and an undesirable change in you. All of us will experience violations of the self, these potential traumas. But when you are violated, you can keep from being in a permanently traumatized state. Of course, it's going to alter the mind. It's going to put you into alert mode for a while. So you will be traumatized initially. If you're going to remain traumatized or not, it will depend on if you continue to allow it to be distressing, that is, learning how to regulate your own nervous system, and if you allow it to change you permanently in an undesirable way. If you don't allow the event to change you, then you are no longer traumatized. If the change that occurs, you allow it to change you, but you make it something that's a change for the better, then you are no longer in a traumatized state. You are healing from your trauma by making sure that the change is desirable, making sure it doesn't change you, or learning how to manage the distress that comes from said trauma. So when it comes to projection, we have to understand how to use projection properly so that we can turn it around into a healing force instead of as an enabling force to continue stuck in that cycle of trauma. Would you like to see how to do that? How to utilize projection so that you can live in peace and happiness and emotional regulation and have genuine connection? Well, whether you like to see it or not, I'm going to show you. This chart that I'm pulling up is a chart on the simple concept, how we create our reality. You probably heard a lot of people talk about this idea that you really create your own reality, right? But that's kind of a weird concept, isn't it? Because what does that even mean? How do we create our own reality? Well, if you take a look at this chart, and I'll explain it to you, you see it all starts in the energy realm with your thoughts, your ideas, your beliefs. Your thoughts and ideas, your perceptions is what creates your emotion. All of your emotion stems from your thoughts and ideas. So when we say, hey, you made me mad, that's a projection. You didn't make me mad. Husband does not make wife mad. Wife does not make husband mad. Child does not make mom upset. Those are all the ways that we project our feelings. The reality is that how we perceive what they said or did is what really makes us upset. It's not them. And you may see examples of this. If you're not following me, I can give you an example, right? A child leaves their toy out in the living room. And you say, Johnny, what? And you become upset, right? So you say, this child has made me mad by leaving their toy in the living room. Johnny, I told you not to leave your toys in the living room. Then Johnny says, oh, I'm sorry. You said that you would fix my toy truck and to leave it on your desk. And then you remember, oh, I did say that. Now, are you still angry? No. Immediately your anger flushes down through your body and you become ashamed, embarrassed, forgiving. Your emotion goes on your thoughts. Your emotion hinges on your perceptions. It is that simple. Other people are not making you mad. When your perception of the situation changed, suddenly your emotion changed. Okay, now here's how we create our reality. The way you think and believe leads into the way you act and the image you present of yourself. The way you think and believe leads into how you act and present yourself. So you go out into the world, for instance, as a confident person, because your thoughts about yourself are, I'm great. I'm wonderful. I'm likable. I'm capable. So then how do you act? Well, you act like a great person who's thoughtful, wonderful, capable. Some of your actions may include walking up to strangers and introducing yourself, making friends, networking, making connections, going for job opportunities and financial opportunities and taking risks and starting businesses. Why? It's because of your thoughts and beliefs about yourself. Does that make sense? So your thoughts and beliefs inform your actions and the way you act, and your image into how you present yourself into the world all comes from your thoughts and beliefs. And then what happens? Well, it starts to create a reality, because what is your outer world like? What is your reality like when you walk up to people, introduce yourself, make friends easily, and go for opportunities? Well, you start having better opportunities, you make more money, you have a better job, and you have more friends. You're more popular. So your reality is walking through a world where you're making money, you have all of your needs provided for, right? And you're well received. So then that leads into your perception, experience, image, how you're perceiving the outside world, what the image of the outside world is to you, as being generally positive. So you're thinking, man, the world is great. I make a lot of money. I have a lot of friends. People are really nice. Opportunities are abundant. Money is abundant, right? That's your perception of the world. And that's how you create your reality. And guess what happens? When you perceive the world as a great place and people as great and yourself as capable, then that leads you to have more thoughts and ideas and beliefs and emotions of a confident, capable, healthy person. Does it make sense? But all of it is projection. You're projecting the reality, but you are actually changing the reality simultaneously. You're starting out with your thought, you're changing it into how you present yourself, which changes the world around you, which informs your experience and perception, which leads you to more thoughts, and it's a cycle. So in the traumatized state, what happens is you've been permanently changed in an undesirable way by the trauma, and so you feel like you can't heal because you're stuck in negative thoughts, negative ideas, negative beliefs, which lead to what? Negative emotions. So if you have a thought like, I can't trust people, and I'm not capable, and I'm not worthy anyway, then how will you enter into the world? Well, you're going to act like you can't trust people, you're not capable. Since you can't trust people, you're not going to walk up to people, you're not going to introduce yourself to people, you're not going to take risks because you can't trust anything or anyone because of your beliefs about the outside world and about yourself, and you don't believe you're capable anyway. So why would you go for job opportunities? You don't believe you're worth the promotion even if you were offered it, so you would turn it down. So then what kind of reality do you live in? A reality with less money, less friends, less genuine connection, more bad experiences because you isolate. And when you do have a bad experience, even if you had the same amount as a person who lives in a positive reality, because there's a lack of positivity, the bad experiences are accentuated. And also, since they feed into and reinforce your negative thoughts and beliefs, your reality is awful. And this is the actual reality that you live in. It is real, but you don't realize how much you created it. And so when you can't get jobs and you can't get opportunities, and you have less money and you have less friends, what's your perception and experience in the world? It's terrible. You lose everything. You lose your car, you lose your house. You don't have friends, you get made fun of, you get bullied more, you feel isolated, you feel more vulnerable. So your image of yourself is that, yeah, I really am awful. And your image of the outside world is that it's really awful, which reinforces the belief and the thought and the idea, which reinforces the way you act, which changes the way that the world is around you, which reinforces your thoughts, and it just keeps going around and around. Does that make sense? This is how we get caught. So the secret is to use your gift of perception, and instead of perceiving in the negative, purposely perceive in the positive, even if you have to create a controlled delusion. Make it one that's helpful to the self. Make your beliefs ones that are helpful to the self. So why not start with this thought about yourself? Maybe I am someone special. It's truthful. It's not too far out there. How about maybe I am capable of something special? Maybe I'm all right. Maybe there are some people that I could connect with and trust to a degree. What do you think is going to happen if you start yourself with that thought, that belief? Well, it's going to create a more stable emotion, right? You're going to feel better. And then how are you going to act? Well, because you decided to change your thoughts and belief, and everything starts in energy, your actions that come off, the way that you'll enter into the world is maybe you'll take some opportunities and you'll take some promotions and you'll take some jobs and maybe you'll talk to people. And then what kind of reality is that going to create? One where you have more successes. So when bad things do happen, it's counteracted by the fact that there's also good things happening in your life. So what's your emotional state going to be? Again, more stable, more even keel. And with a nice mix of positive experiences and positive connections in your reality, your perception, your experience will be nicely even keel, positive. And as a result, you are no longer stuck in the cycle of trauma. And in this sense, you can, generally speaking, create your reality. Now, this is not to be taken to the extreme. I mean, there are some things we can't control, right? You could be born in a war-torn country. You could be born into captivity. But even in these situations, we still control our thoughts, our ideas, our beliefs. And therefore, we have the most influence over our emotion. And therefore, we still control our actions. So everything in the green, we control. And what happens because of the powerful energy of controlling your thoughts and your beliefs and your emotions and making them positive, what happens is it starts creating a better reality, even when your reality is outside your control and super negative. You take prisoners, for instance. What happens to prisoners who behave really well? Even in prison, they get more privileges, don't they? So they actually affect their outward reality to become better. And sometimes they even get let off earlier. This is what I mean when I say we can create our reality. So you have this ability to utilize projection. How so? Well, if you believe that people are good, then you will find that people are good. If you believe that you are capable, then you will find that you are capable. Does that make sense? So you can project a more positive reality and live in a more positive reality by changing your beliefs. The more positive thoughts and emotions that you experience, the more positive your outward experience will be and the more positive thoughts and emotions you'll have. You can use projection to change your reality. It makes it a lot easier to be patient with people when you're not judgmental. But your projection of reality is people are not judgmental. They're worried about themselves. And they're imperfect and I'm imperfect too. Now it becomes very easy to be patient, easy to be less judgmental. So let us utilize our ability to control the energy of our mind. That is where we focus our conscious mind to create positive thoughts, to hone in on positive beliefs. And as a result, to the extent possible, create a positive reality so that we can enjoy all the peace, all the prosperity, all the positive chemicals that are desirable, the serotonin and the oxytocin and the dopamine. And we can be living in an internal paradise as a result. I'll see you there.